Good morning.
Good morning.
May 2019 already.
Yeah.
Where's the year?
More than halfway through May.
I know. Almost done. Then we'll be 6 months done in the year.
Time to put up the Christmas tree.
How long is your beard? Very long.
Getting there.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so we're doing pressure points today. And I like this topic. I have fun. Every time that we teach you write, you learn, which I think is very nice. So here we go. Let's look at the definition of pressure points. Okay, enter. Right, enter.
Change it up there.
Yeah, well. Pressure points. The definition is a fact or a situation that could expose a company to high levels of risk. So the first thing I kept thinking of is, when do we put ourselves at risk in business? Right? What are those moments where if we didn't correct it or think about trying to correct it or even realize that we were at risk of either losing a guest or losing an employee or losing a competitive advantage, if we don't even know how to recognize it, we're really in deep trouble.
Well, and you said, when do we put ourselves at risk? The moment the sign goes up and there's a key in the door.
Oh, yeah. That day. I was thinking yesterday as I was putting the final touches on this, many times we've taken phone calls where an employee has decided to leave an establishment or multiple employees are deciding to leave. And the first question I usually ask, especially if the owner is unaware and we've been informed first, I say, did you see any behavioral changes? Are there any climate changes that were happening in the business that you didn't feel? I can tell you, even there's little things like my mom says, oh, the trees are leaning a little bit. They're leaning a little bit. We're going to have a storm. I mean, she starts realizing climate changes to what to anticipate. And the same thing is in behavioral changes of staff. Did you recognize anything? Or did you say, that's odd, but never did anything with it? You have to pay attention. And risk is usually presenting itself. We just weren't listening to it or for it. So we're going to talk more about that.
Well, many times on the other side of risk is great opportunity.
Well, true.
The larger the risk, the larger the opportunity.
Yeah. So let's just put some. I just jotted some down while I was writing this. You can add to it, of course, and things that you're going to think off the top of your head, but not making or last minute decisions. I mean, that puts you at risk all the time. I call them fire drills too. I hate when we do it at PSC, fire drill. Remember as a kid, you'd be in the classroom and all of a sudden ding, 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 and they were drills. It wasn't really in a situation. They were just practicing just in case, so everyone would be aware. In fact, yesterday we had tornado sirens going off, and the children came home and said, the principal said, this is not a drill. This is not a drill, because the alarms were going off. And, both children said, yeah, they were scared a little bit because they were used to just doing drills, but not really having to respond to them in a critical mass. So not making decisions, a lot of times we don't make time for them, and then we put everyone in chaos because our decision making isn't there. And everyone knows people are working on other things, but not making our last minute decisions and having people have to respond like that. If you've got planners working for you, they resent that. So keep thinking about that. Cash flow's not flowing. You're still putting all of your productivity into the business primarily. Employee productivity and results aren't where you think they should be right now. People are complacent. In fact, they're not only complacent, they want to work less hours. You need to add new team members, it should say. You need an expedited training program. Your known bottlenecks in the business are putting you at risk. Not enough front desk labor. The salon hours are sketchy as far as how you look occupied. The team schedule isn't supporting the business vision. Lack of communication. The to-do list that never gets attention and lack of time is an excuse. These are the ones that I just thought of off the top of my head.
quick story that happened yesterday that kind of accentuates. It's a metaphor for what pressure points can do. Excuse me. There was a challenge that one of our team members here at PSC was having with an Excel worksheet, and so two of us were already standing behind the desk of the person who was struggling with willing to help. And then Brian, our IT guy, happened to be walking through, and he saw the hubbub, and he joined in as well. So now there's three of us watching the one person who's struggling. And the more that she pulled up menus and this and that, the more she couldn't see anything. And it occurred to me that that's exactly how I am. Even when it's just Brian coming up to look at something on my computer, it's almost like I can't see a single word. Things that I'm in all the time, I can't see. And it's because of that extra set of eyes. It's because of the pressure. And many times in business, in a salon setting, a lot of the pressure that you see is a situation, but with your team's eyes looking back at you. The pressure point is as much to say, okay, boss, what are you going to do about it? Your move, and we're watching. And that almost gives you that pressure blindness that comes with that, because you know what you would do if no one was looking.
No, pressure blind.
But yeah, pressure blind. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about as we start this. There are known bottlenecks, and certainly there are things. Terry, when you talked about the productivity and an owner putting their productivity back into the business, that really means that your revenue, you're not paying yourself as if you were a staff member, and your revenue is really supporting the cash flow and the daily business flow of the business. Your own numbers, your own volume that you do behind the chair with the guests.
Well, and if you lose an employee or someone wants to work less, you've got to put more in, unless you replace that revenue and that productivity and all of that. When do you find time to do all of that? I know that's the first thing people are saying. Oh my gosh, you're right. I've got many of these on the list, and I'm not getting to them. Well, you've got to schedule time for it. And that's when I always look at salon hours, because they just don't make sense to me in asking an owner to be able to work on these things. And we always give concrete examples of it, but when do you do one-on-ones if everyone's working different schedules, if the hours of operation are from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., and when does the business get to rest and work on itself? And I'm not talking about Sunday and Monday, because Sunday people need to have family time and be able to chill out from the business. So I'm talking about Tuesday through Saturday right now.
My next thought is when do you put those pressure points into other people's hands and trust their decisions in those pressure points? And at the same time, maintaining that directly reflects on you as the leader. Sometimes it's easier just to say, okay, my front desk leader has that pressure point. They're making decisions from their talent base, not necessarily sometimes the way you would make the decision if you were in that position.
I just think that a lot of times owners know where they're going to go first, and usually they go right to the salon floor. That's
Absolutely.
where they feel the
Behind
most
the chair,
comfortable,
more hours.
and leaning into the traffic of the business. However, that's not making anything better. It's putting you at risk, because you've got to be able to create depth and strength. And I don't know how you do that the way I see many owners' existing schedules right now.
Well, if you're a working owner behind the chair,
which most are,
which most are, there is a inherent pressure point that always exists, and that's what if. What if something happened that pulled you away from the business and away from being able to leave your productivity in the business? What if all of a sudden your guests had to be seen by people who you were paying as hairdressers? What if your business didn't have any of that contribution from you? Could it stand on its own, and for how long? And then so that's really, to me, one of the biggest pressure points.
Well, I also find it, I don't want to say humorous, because I see us do this too. I don't have time to get things done. I don't have time to get things done. If someone says, do you want to travel for education? Absolutely. So the excuse is I don't have time, but always making time to do the favorite list. And that's tough too. You know, people watch that and they can see the weaknesses and they can see the risk and they're probably talking about them. They're not going to call them risks. They're going to call them frustrations. And that's what's difficult. Okay, so let's see if we can go into more depth on this. You know, I think if you listen close enough to your business, you'll hear the pressure points loud and clear. I think that the biggest pressure point that we have at times is we pass that one up to you. Can we get a decision on that? We said, look, it's out of our wheelhouse, or we need some help on this, and we're just waiting. And, you know, how many times should they have to ask? And my thing that I like to say to them is, ask as many times as necessary if it's creating a barrier for us. We might be addressing another breakdown somewhere else, but this one's really bothering you. You've got to stay in there and fight. But they get exhausted. They get exhausted from listening. And, you know, a lot of times they'll shut down. Silence. If you listen close enough and you've got silence going on, you'll hear that pressure point loud and clear too. You'll hear that they're just not talking and that you heard communication lesson. And I think a leader shouldn't make excuses to that. They should just listen to it. I had to talk to someone yesterday and I said, this took place and they didn't get a phone call. Well, they've been working on, I didn't want to hear the reason. I wanted just to say, I got a complaint. They're not getting a call back. Don't give me the excuse. Tell me you've got it. And I think a lot of times leadership will put the excuse in place. And you know what? The employees don't care. They don't care about the excuse. So listen, as far as feel the energy coming in and out of your business, look at the front desk staff. Are they sighing a lot? Are they feeling frustration? Just listen to it. It'll tell you. Every company has a song that it's singing. And you can tell when it's right, and you can tell when it's wrong or it's off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things I'm hoping they get it. Like I'll say to Steve, "How was the meeting? How did it go the other day?" Good. You know, I think they got it. I hope they got it. Well, hope isn't a business strategy, and we either have to put things in place. We can't have our fingers crossed hoping they get it. We have to put systems in place that either make them get it, they test out, you test for knowledge, you're looking for results, but it's just not a business strategy. First time I said that to you, what do you think?
Well, I think it's true, first of all. Second of all, you know, relative to, I think that the result of a business strategy can restore hope. But hope itself is not a business strategy. I get that. And the whole reason why you would enter into a difficult or challenging conversation, the reason why you would train, the reason why you would have a specific promotion or plan to add a new bevy of services into your business, or even build a new location, a remodel. Those might all be strategies that you have. But they do result in hope that the net of that makes the business better.
Oh, you wouldn't do it if you weren't thinking that it could shift for you.
But the opposite, if you did nothing, it could take away hope. You'd have no reason to believe.
Oh, and I think a lot of times when we put a business strategy in place, let's say we're going to take on a new service, and 8 out of the 10 people show up for training, and then we had time for the training. How are we going to go back and get those 2 people, right? So now we got to break. I don't know. No one taught me. I couldn't make the training. I'm sorry. I couldn't get a babysitter. Blah. So we start with the excuses. The problem is now we're launching a new service halfway. We're not able to pull that off. We had a meeting here the other day. We're going to be launching something in July, and just because we made a decision that we're moving forward doesn't mean the rest of this team is on the same page yet. And you've got to get them involved in helping them. Right now, they're going to follow us because of our vision, but they've got to have the things in place to make sure that it comes off smoothly and that they feel knowledgeable and powerful in it. And they had really good questions, some that I hadn't even considered. That collaboration, I was talking, well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but that collaboration can help you understand if people are on the same page with you. God, that's the biggest thing. And asking them right out loud, what do you think? What do you think? What's your first response to this? You want to hear them say, wow, I'm excited, versus, I don't know, the jury's out. Then you got to go back to that person and bring them back in. I used this one last month and I like it again. When you think about the risks in your business, if you don't do anything, your comfort zone is it just feels safe and in control, and we kind of know what we're doing. And then the fear zone and the learning zone and the growth zone. Where are you at with some of these issues we talked about? If you make a list of all the things that are putting your business or even putting your leadership at risk, meaning you're not having a blast doing it, what are the reasons? And every one of these could fall in somewhere under here. Maybe you're great at hiring people, but then the training program is weak and we haven't touched the training program in 15 years, or we haven't changed it, or we haven't put it into print, or we don't spend time on it, and we think lecture is enough versus having a system in place that they can go home and read and study and giving them assignments. That's the thing that I'm thinking. Even we've been told, our training programs, you learn them, but a lot of times our training is not in print. That's not good. Is yours in print? Same thing. Trigger points. It's a big deal for me. And when I was doing my research for this, gosh, I just felt like every time I use the word alert, and especially in an IT conversation with Brian, I know he hates it because it's like, oh, what do you want to see? Okay, what do you want to be alerted on? And when I was doing my research, there's a lot of CEOs that say, my biggest tool that I have to be in place is alerts that automatically tell me where I should be responding in my business. And it's measurements specifically created to signal important changes in critical performance levels, both positive and negative. And it's overall per employee, per customer, per division. And because we get so much information, even at PSC, but how do you narrow it down? How do I see it at a glance and just be able to go, ooh, we need to respond to this one. This one's in trouble on this. Look what happened with this brand. Trigger points are key in business. And triggers need to alert all leadership. Maybe only 2 or 3 are going to respond to it in our case. And in the salon, how are you responding to it if someone has fallen off on their rescheduling rate, fallen off on their take-home dollar per guest, fallen off on their chemical percentage? How are you going to respond to it? And you better have a strategy to do so. So trigger points are key.
There's a book that I'm reading right now, which is called Measure What Matters. And you can imagine why that book jumped off the shelf at me, those of you who know us, because we're all about keeping score. And of course, anything with the title matters in it will get my attention right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But basically what I found it to be is a system that was used by huge companies, Intel and Google, to name 2 of them, a system of measuring what matters and being able to define no more than 3 key objectives. And then what are the key results that come from those objectives, so that the whole team, you can have each team working on their key objective and measuring their key results. So it's almost built-in trigger points, built-in alerts. And I'm finding it to be, I'm probably 3/4 of the way through it, and I'm finding it to be fascinating how it's been used. There's a lot of case studies and key success stories, and you even hear from the CEOs that, or the project leaders that it was used. Like you hear from the head of Intel at the time when they were most challenged, and how they used these OKRs to really forge their future.
Yeah, what's an OKR?
Objective and key results.
Okay. So you take action, right? That's kind of what you're thinking about. I mean, if this is one of the examples I read yesterday is a new athletic director comes in and they say, look, if you don't get on a winning season, you got to replace the head coach. So the athletic director meets with the head coach and says, you've got 4 games left in the season. If you lose all 4, get your resume out immediately. If you lose 3, if you lose 2, you lose 1. So every one of them. So he lost all 4. And he went up to do his press conference, the athletic director, and they said, was the coach surprised? He said, absolutely not. Wasn't surprised by our decision. This didn't come as a shock to him. We had talked about it in advance and said this is what we needed to have happen, or this would take place. That's taking action, immediately corrective action. If your dollar per guest doesn't go up, if your rescheduling rate, if you are not producing these kind of results, if you're not bringing in new guests, we're going to not be feeding you in the salon any longer. You develop actions to support the corrective action. What do you want to see? And if you don't take action, that in itself is an action. See, when you don't, it sends a powerful message to other people that it's okay. It just doesn't matter. What matters is I get this turned in on a monthly basis. Does it matter that this happens? Not really, because nothing's going to happen. So what are you doing with your staff if they're not coming through for you and producing results? Downtime, just because you are a commission employee, doesn't mean it doesn't have to be addressed. You might not be paying for anything for that downtime, and they might not be making anything, but it's not okay because the business should be generating dollars during that time that chair is available. So alerts, you need to be alerted and force a decision point. That's what taking action means. And it's very risky. There's a lot of times we use in our conversations, and I learned this years ago from somebody, and I don't remember what company I was with at the time, but it said, I'm going to risk an uncomfortable moment to bring out the best in this situation. And it is risky. I mean, you risk people's emotions sometimes, but if you're coaching all the time, it should never have to be that uncomfortable. And you're having alerts to force a decision point where you're either giving positive or negative attention. There's people that are having their best days, but because we don't have alerts on it, no one says anything to them. And then they feel like, wow, I have my best day ever, and no one even said anything. So alerts force great conversation and great opportunities to stroke someone. They force them. You don't miss that. And that's what's really positive about it too. That's why the trigger point or the alerts help you do that. But you have to address as you see where the situation's going to get worse. A lot of times we'll talk, if we would have addressed a problem when it was this big, it probably would have taken this much energy, this much effort, and this much time to get it back on. But if you wait till it's this big, that's how big the effort, the energy, the emotion, everything else is going to be involved in making it better. Did you want to say anything to this?
Not on this one.
Okay, good. So we're going to vital factors. I mean, we know what they are. We know the vital signs in the human body. I mean, we know the first thing that they do is they're going to weigh us, which is always our least favorite part. They're going to weigh us, take our blood pressure. They're going to look at our pulse,
Take our temperature.
take our temperature. They're going to look at, and then they say, anything going on differently with you that the doctor needs to know about? You know, what are the vital signs? They never say, hey, you've been here 15 years. We don't have to weigh you today. You know, we've been 15 years and your blood pressure, it's always pretty normal. So we'll just skip that. Are you known for this conversation daily on vital signs of the business? I mean, I met with owners just recently. They didn't know their traffic again on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't know how much take home they sold. They didn't know what their chemical percentage was. They didn't know their occupancy. Were they at capacity? They didn't know any of that.
Well, just imagine right now with all of the technology that's in place, even in salons, a lot of those vital signs of your business are entrusted to your information technology. They're entrusted to your computer. They generate out of the front desk. They generate out of the point of sale. And imagine if you went into a doctor and they hooked you up and they took all your vital signs. They use machines to do that. But people still read the vital signs. The doctor still interprets what is on what those vital signs say.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in a case where, yes, you've got computers, I can't tell you the amount of time we've been coaching salons, and it winds up in teaching them how to read or how to go back and get the right numbers
Find it.
out
Right
of their system.
Yep.
And so don't get so comfortable sometimes because, hey, people said I needed a computerized. People said I needed an electronic appointment scheduler. People said I needed this, and we did it. You're not done. It's only a tool. It's only something that's there. It still needs your leadership eyes, your interpretation, your setting standards, and them meeting or not meeting those standards. It's conversation. It has to be conversation. Wynn says all the time that people value where you show up. Do you show up around the vital signs of your business? Do you show up around those conversations with the people who are generating that?
So what is the performance conversation on a daily basis? What does it look like? What are we going to do today? What guests are coming in? Who are we going to see today? Is it a top customer today? Is there anyone you want me to spend some time with? Does your career path and compensation speak to this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like where you show up too, but if you value these things, does your career path support this? And I don't know. You know, I guess when I was an athlete and when I was an employee, I said, what do you want me to do? And I'd give it to them, right? If I wanted to play or I wanted to make the top list and be the favorite, I gave it to them. You've got people trying to get out of work versus get work. I mean, hit the mark for you. Last thing that your employees should be in your mind is lazy and fat, right? They're lazy and they're fat on where they are financially, so they're comfortable. And that's the last thing you want around you is a full bear, right? They go in the woods and sleep. So I'm trying to figure out how do we keep performance relative so they want to compete. And a lot of it's about being noticed, getting the attention for the performance. We don't even look at it. Sometimes we'll do payroll and go, oh my God, they had a great week. Well, why are we looking at it now? So that's difficult. These vital factors are big.
You know, it's funny. I heard a baseball player, a pro baseball player, interviewed yesterday, and I didn't know who he was at first. They were just calling him by his first name, and so I had no idea the point of reference of the conversation. And one of the things that they said to this player was, okay, we've talked about the on the field stuff. Now let's talk about the off the field stuff. And off the field, you've got some something new that's been kind of lurking around your season so far with one of your teammates, and now he's with the club in the clubhouse. How do you think the team is doing with that, and how are they responding? And I was so impressed with his answer, because what he said was this. He said, I'm a baseball player, and we're in the middle of our season, and my focus is being a good teammate and playing the best that I can possibly play. He said, I don't worry about off the field stuff. It's not my concern.
So someone was behaving badly or something off the field?
They had a situation off the field.
Distraction.
And they were suspended for a period of time. And now they joined the team. And so it was, okay, what's it like now to have that person in the clubhouse?
We have that in salons all the time.
Yeah, all the time, that stuff. And so then later in the conversation, I again was in. I didn't know to be impressed until after they were done with the athlete and they told a little bit of his story. But they were asking him what he's a pitcher. So he pitches once every 5 days, right? So they've got their routine. And they were asking him, what do you do in a city when you're not pitching? Do you walk around the city? Do you do this? Do you do that? You're a golfer. Do you golf on your days off? What do you do? And he said, well, the way I look at it right now, I'm a baseball player. And all my efforts are in baseball. I know that at some point this will end, and then I've got the rest of my life to play golf. He said, in fact, I haven't played golf in 1.5 years. And so I thought that was interesting. So when they hung up the phone, they said, this player, so the thing that, so we were blown away that he hadn't played golf in 1.5 years, because his father is, and has been his whole life involved with the PGA, and he himself is a very good golfer. And they thought, how strange is that he hasn't golfed in 1.5 years? But he explained why. Because right now, at this point in time in his life, he is a baseball player, and that has his entire attention and focus. And oh, by the way, he also is a pretty incredible pitcher. He's got less than a 0.2 ERA for the month so far. So he's given up 1 run all month, and just really pretty amazing. But again, his story, the way he carried himself and purported himself. How about us in the salon? How are we doing that? How do we separate out those things? It is, unfortunately, as salon owners, your job is kind of the off-the-field stuff with them, if that comes up. But it shouldn't be amongst the teammates.
But are we tolerating more than we should?
Well, sure. I mean, I think we all do. But that's the goal, the vision, and the only way we're going to stop tolerating more than what we should is to focus on it, is to get something done. And I think that sometimes when we say that the leader is the keeper of the vision, and that vision, and that vision needs to constantly be out there, and the vision should tie to the vital factors, the vital signs. And so the report, it's like I sit on a couple of different boards, and one of the things that I think needs to be done when we have our monthly call is there needs to be a report of what is. That's where we start. We can't just all get on a call and have a conversation without hearing what's the financial report. Where do we stand? That should start the call before we start looking at something else. What activities have been done in the last month? What meetings took place? There's just things that are vital signs of every type of business in that business, because they're advocating, because they're taking care of governmental things for our association. It's important to know where do we stand financially, and who's doing what, and what's taken place in the last month, and what are our critical challenges going forward. What new legislation has happened that should have our attention. And that's where all of us collaborating is better than some of us.
So when we look at the KPIs or the overall and per employee, these are the ones. Now, perhaps a couple of them, like total traffic and such, you can look at the breakdowns. But here's our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and should be our conversation is, this is our total revenue. And this could be projected too. What I love about the software now, and I say this all the time to Steve, when I was in the restaurant industry, I could only take a reservation. I had no idea what they were going to have when they got there. It was just a reservation. We could guess what the average ticket would be, but we had no idea. In the total revenue, we not only know what we're going to do today, we can know what we're going to do tomorrow that's on the schedule already financially, and then how can we influence that change? Or we can know what's coming down all next week or weeks in advance, what our revenue looks like, and how could we influence that? Oh, I would have loved to have those numbers. But now we have total traffic. We're looking at revenue and we're looking at traffic. How many guests? And how many guests do we want, are we seeking to have in our business this week? Is it 200 guests, 150, 100? We're going to break 100 for the first time. And that traffic is key because that's our profit that's coming in. And we look at how many hours and who's bringing in the most traffic and do we have enough support staff to do it. Traffic is key because of what you do with it once it's there. The total dollar per guest average ticket, the service portion of the take home, the rescheduling percentage, and the chemical percentage. All these are key numbers to look at and can easily be influenced with leadership. All of them can be easily influenced. And upselling the menu or take home or that rescheduling percentage, you're looking at those as they're happening right in the business. You should be getting printouts of that and information on that throughout the day, maybe 3 or 4 times, or every time you run up to the front desk knows to provide you with those, the key numbers, the scorecard of the business that day.
Absolutely. And the key with these KPIs is to know it in the moment when you can affect it. It's to get out of the rearview mirror. Quit looking at past reports, not as your only way of looking at something. Don't look at what's already happened. Look at what you can influence, and then pay attention to what you can influence. With every guest, we're in a business that happens in 30 to 60-minute increments, one guest at a time. One guest at a time, you're moving either closer to your key objectives or you're not.
Well, I think that I read an article in, Jennifer gave me an article, and it's, everyone thinks there's a shortage of talent. There's not a shortage of talent. There's a shortage of recruiting and going and making time to find new talent. And the two things we're looking for is talent and traffic. And then what are we going to do with them? The KPIs support the talent and the traffic, right? Mm-hmm. Do we have enough in there? When I was meeting with an owner this week, I said, how many chairs? 9. How many staff? 4.5. Okay, so what are you doing about the other 9? Nothing. We don't have time to do anything. Now, why'd you put the 9 in there in the first place?
Just in case.
Just in case? Hope? Love? So when you look at talent and traffic, how many hours do you need to be at?
And it's even more than that. I don't know of a single business that projects less in a future year than they did in the current. So when we all get to projecting 2020, you're going to project an increase over 2019.
And then you have to defend why.
You have to defend why, but you also have to say, am I going to have the same amount of talent working a similar amount of hours?
And the same
What's
amount of
my
traffic?
reason to believe that it can be true? Because many times we project, I see salons project increases that they don't have staff to fulfill. And they don't realize that. And so or they're looking at a year and saying, oh, my year's flat. Okay.
Or they help, one of them said, we're hoping a salon closes and we can take their 4 or 5 people. Oh, please, tell me that is a strategy, that you want to inherit ex-employees of somebody.
Yeah, who couldn't keep
who couldn't keep
their existing salon alive.
So talent and traffic. Are we projecting new talent? Are we projecting traffic? What does that look like? What's the training have to do? Training have to become to support that new talent that's coming in? How are we going to have time to do it? I mean, everyone's gung-ho at first. We're going to do this every Wednesday. And then what happens? Oh, something became more important that Wednesday and we couldn't do it. Either you live by it or you don't. I was talking to Tammy. Wait, did I put that in? I didn't. I'll talk about it now. Tammy is our director of customer service, which we call Salon Matters. So she's director of Salon Matters. And about 2 years ago, I got to the point where I stopped asking, is she meeting with your people? Oh, you know, Terry, it's tough. We have to turn it. I said, look, I will put staff on it. That's how much I believe in it. So when do you want to do it? Thursdays. Thursday mornings? Yes. Okay. You're going to go from 8 to 9. I think they go from 8 to 9 on Thursday mornings, right? So we have other staff that go in and answer the phone from 8 to 9. It's not going to ask us to set ourselves on fire. It's important that they collaborate. It's important that they get together. And she fought me on it. Didn't want to have an organized meeting. And, sometimes they're grumpy. Okay, change it. So they started having a meeting every Thursday. And now it's one of their best moments of the week. They love it. And here's why. Her 3 C's: communication, connection, collaboration on an idea. Those 3 things. They don't miss a Thursday meeting now. And she said, I would have never thought that putting an idea on the table and hearing them all collaborate, what about this, what about this, what about this? She said that wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. I would have gotten fought on it. Now it makes them, she goes, I don't lecture for an hour. It's them just to talk about what needs to be addressed. Maybe there's a new system that's coming into play. Maybe we're going to be launching something and I need their minds on thinking about it in advance. We've got to have our people's minds. Many of you don't even meet with your people on a regular basis. That goes back to comfort zone. Oh, I can't get them together. Close your business down for an hour, and say that's who we are and that's what we do. It's tough. We meet once a month as a director team, and then they meet once a week without me, and then they meet every day quickly just on bullets together. I think that it keeps them connected to each other. And you can tell if we miss a meeting or they miss one, you can tell they're out of sync. And they need that time just to connect, and we have lunch together that day, and the conversation can go anywhere it wants to go. We have an agenda, but it's going to go in many different directions. I can't imagine not doing it for them and for us. I think it's key. Talent and traffic. When you're developing your talent, we're not just talking about brand new talent. We're talking about the talent you have on staff right now. People wanting to work less hours, be part-time people. Steve always has said years ago, I think the first time he said to me, I'm okay with people working part-time if they have a full-time commitment. And that they know that they have to be responsible for the knowledge. They still have to go to education. They still have to be one of us and make a huge impact in a positive way. When they're here, that you don't even realize their contribution is so big you don't even realize they work part-time, right? So that's key. When you look at an alarm system, I kind of laugh at this a little bit, but an alarm system, that you wish you had installed on your business, gosh, if we only had our cameras on today, we would have saw who stole from us, or we would have had our alarm system on, or the smoke detectors working. We wouldn't have had the fire get that far out of hand. Same thing. Alarm system. What is your alarm system for your business right now? And I don't know. I think there's so much storytelling that's not positive. And you've got to tell the story you want to be told in your business, and create so much enthusiasm around it that's the story they start telling too. Mm-hmm. Right?
As I think about it, as we start to wrap up on pressure points, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, we always talk at PSC about how we have 3 customers. And because I've dealt with this quite a bit recently in business, I want to be sure and cover this. We have the obvious customer. That's the guest that sits in our chair. And then we are full on customer to each other. We have to be good teammates. We've got to be good with each other. We've got to have that same care factor, that same commitment to each other that we have to our guest that sits in our chair. And then the third customer is our vendors and service providers that come into the business. It can be anybody from, great example, it can be anybody from our window washer to our mail person, to our UPS driver, to the various consultants and representatives that come in from the brands that you represent. That they are customer as well. And so what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is you can have a superstar that's great behind the chair with a guest, but if they're a terrible team member, they don't show up at meetings, they're not on time, they badmouth the other staff, they've always got drama surrounding them, it's all about them and their customers and what is and isn't happening in the salon about their customers. That's not a good fit. If they are disrespectful or to me, not showing up for a class that the salon is scheduled is disrespectful to the owner. It's also disrespectful to the service provider that's providing the class. Mm-hmm. And so, that also, to me, makes for a team member that doesn't fit. So that's just a thought process, because I think that one of the key pressure points, we say the number one challenge facing salons forever has been the finding, hiring, training, and retaining qualified staff. Well, it's that balance and where are we at with each of our team members that can make such a difference. But it also starts with the vision that we cast.
You said you were going to give an example
over our business. Well, the example is our window washer from the Lombard School. Keith has been someone who, when you first saw, funny thing was, the very first day I met him at the Lombard School, when we just opened it, he impressed me. He had energy. He had a personality. In fact, I wanted him to come out to our home, and he's just in the western suburbs where we live, was too far. And so he couldn't. But over time, we kept, and not just me, but our team. He was one of the most beloved people in our school by the future professionals, by our team members. When Wynn and Kathy and Tim Story and people like that come to speak once a year. One time he was washing the windows in my office, and he said, Steve, my goal is to become a professional motivational speaker. And I thought, wow, that's cool. I'll help any way I can. And so we've invited him to various things. Well, this week he was here again when we had a professional speaker in PSC. And he
came down here?
Yeah. Okay. He was the best dressed. He was earliest to arrive. He sat through 3 sessions. He's just an amazing guy. And here's the other thing. He's written a book. His book comes out on Amazon, I think August 1st. I think it's called something like, Are You a Comfort Zoner or an Owner? And anyway, the point is that there's a guy that started off as a service provider to our company in really a pretty ordinary job. And just in looking up and seeing him as a human being, he's created something really special for himself and for us. We're really proud of him. So there's Keiths like that in each one of our businesses. and they add to your culture, and they add to the good, positive feelings of your business and its stewardship in your community. So the last thing I was thinking about is that there's this thing called BHAG goals. And I hadn't thought about it in a while, and they referred to it in the book that I'm reading, and it's a big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG. And I think sometimes we set comfortable goals. Sometimes we talk about 10% shifts, minor improvements. And sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes it is minor improvements in certain areas that can have a huge turnaround. But sometimes a team needs a big, hairy, audacious goal and a plan and the energy and the champion that's going to bring that forward. Nobody ever was just wandering around and climbed Mount Everest. And I think it takes something extraordinary. And I just wonder, I was in an extraordinary salon a week ago for its actual dollar production per square foot, one that I hadn't seen in a while, and it was incredible. It was remarkable. And they could have said, oh, we just have 350 square feet. We're never going to be much. Or they could have set that big, hairy, audacious goal, and they became somebody.
So what are they doing in 350 square feet?
They're doing just under $700,000 a year, which is amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
With 4 chairs.
With 4 chairs and 350. And there's a lot of people who would say 350 square feet, you can only fit 2 chairs in that. I mean, and you walk in that business and you have to smile. I mean, they're working. And it has a feel and a culture. Tom Peters said all along that you can feel it when you walk into a business that's got it. And that's what we want to create in all of our businesses. If your guest isn't telling you they feel something different when they walk into your salon, examine, look at it. Sometimes we need to look at our own businesses from the street and say, what do I see? What do I feel? What do others feel? What do others see? What do they feel? And then what do I need? How do I need to adjust as a leader? Because is what I see from the street what I envisioned when we began this journey as a business? So pressure points. I think that the biggest pressure point that I would love to wish for all of you is that your
They don't have any.
Is that your business is what you saw in your mind's eye when you decided to open it.
That's good. That's good. You have any questions for me today?
No.
None?
None. We're good.
What are my pressure points today? I've got a to-do list I'm working on, thinking about and sketching out a plan, and then I need to see if you and I are on the same page on it. But it's thinking ahead. It's thinking ahead. And a year ago, I would have never thought that we'd be having this conversation today, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pressure points for you is, what are the pressure points that lead your business to become something different, right? I mean, whether it's opening more services. I mean, that's where most hairdressers live, is most owners go, okay, what is my technical offerings? That's where they're the most comfortable, because once again, it's the salon floor where they know how to dream big. Now we have to dream big operationally too. And that means people, systems, services.
Great.
We're done?
We're done.
We're done. We'll see you next month. Be good, everyone.
Have a great May.